All right, good morning, everyone. So glad to have you on Sunday morning here at Market Street Church of Christ for our Sunday morning Bible hour. This morning we have a special guest speaker that's going to be giving a presentation. So instead of our regular Bible class, we've asked all the adult classes to come in here this morning. And this morning we have with us Wayne and Cindy Rogers. They are with, as you can see on the screen, 416 Ministries. It is a work of the church. And without taking any more of his time, I present to you our brother, Wayne Rogers.
Good morning. Grateful to be back with you. It has been quite a while. Of course, we visited a couple months back, and I think we were either in summertime or fall, one of the others. It's hard to keep up with, and you'll see why here in just a moment. But we worked with the Gulf Breeze congregation. Some of you will remember that from 2012 through 2017. And so we worked in the area, close friends with Preston. And so we've worked in the area. We know a little bit, and we've met some of you through the years and are just grateful for the relationship that we have and the opportunity to be here to talk about a stateside mission work that started in June 2024. And this was something that Cindy and I had started working on maybe a year prior to that. Probably something that was working on us for 28 years of ministry in the kingdom. But we just didn't know that yet. So we were working maybe to that point for some different reasons and things that were going on in our lives and in our ministries through those years. I wanted to begin in Ephesians chapter 4. And to kind of build up and set the stage for what this work really is. It's a little bit different than a typical mission work in the sense that it is not pure evangelistic in its effort. It is ultimately, because obviously the Great Commission, and that's what every Christian and disciple of Christ has been called to be a part of. But this work in particular comes from Ephesians 4:16, as you can see on the screen. And so just building to that point, let's notice a couple of things here in Ephesians chapter 4. In your studies, you're well acquainted with the fact that the last half of this letter, chapters 4, 5, and 6, become very practical, dealing with relationships in the church. First three chapters are dealing with God's plan to save mankind, how the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, chapter 1, have accomplished that through their will, and in so doing, ultimately have brought all of mankind together, right? Jews and Gentiles, chapter 2, chapter 3. It's been in the eternal mind of God. It's His eternal purpose in saving mankind. But you get to the end of chapter 3, it is for the very glory of God through Jesus Christ, where? In the body of Christ, in the church, right? Chapter 3, verses 20 and 21. Then you open up chapter 4, and it begins in a very practical way. Of course, therefore, right? I've said all that to say this. Therefore, walk worthy of the calling wherewith you are called. And talks about with all lowliness of mind and that meek spirit, endeavoring to keep the unity of the Spirit and the bond of peace. And you have that platform of unity. And all of those verses, all the 7 ones that are listed there. And then you have, especially in a first century context, a conversation about spiritual gifts and the length of time they were going to be there and why they were going to be there. And that kind of brings us to verse 12. For the equipping of the saints, for the work of ministry, for the edifying of the body of Christ. Verse 13, till we all come to the unity of the faith and knowledge of the Son of God, to a perfect man, to the measure of the stature of the fullness of Christ, that we should no longer be children, tossed to and fro, carried about with every wind of doctrine, by the trickery of men, cunning craftiness and deceitful plotting, but speaking truth in love, may grow up in all things into Him who is the head, even Christ, from whom the whole body, joined and knit together by what every joint supplies, according to the effective working by which every part does its share, causes growth of the body for the edifying of itself in love. You see God's plan from chapter 1 coming to pass and then being played out in a very practical way You have that platform of unity. That's where everything begins with God. The right type of mindset so that we understand where we need to be in approaching God and being as part of the kingdom. And then understanding the work that is set before us for the equipping of the saints, for the edifying of the body of Christ. And so this work from Ephesians 4:16 is about edification. It is about edifying our brotherhood. And so as stateside missionaries, that's our purpose. This is what we are setting out to do. We've been doing it now for a year and a half. We'll get into some of those areas where we've worked and some of the specific things in which we do. But let's kind of set it up this way. Why we exist. Preachers especially, and by the way, we are, I probably should say this up front, but we are partnered with the Memphis School of Preaching in our work. And so we are paired up with them for the helping, especially working with preachers. Part of this is from the very first thing that you read here. Preachers often feel worn out, exhausted, sometimes very isolated. And in our travels over the last several years, maybe up to the last decade, especially as we've visited other congregations, traveled some out west, traveled into some areas where the church itself is very isolated, you can imagine then that preachers might become very isolated. Many of them leave the pulpit, and so some of them are very isolated, separated from others. They're out of that typical circle of our brotherhood, if you will, and having a good support system around them. Certainly preachers need that. We all need that as disciples, so we can understand that. Some congregations lack support, lack resources. Some of them lack preachers. Some of them lack good curriculum and teaching resources and things like that. And so we find that churches are sometimes very weak. And there are a couple of things that the way this may play out. Some of them because of maybe sometimes just geographically. As I mentioned a moment ago, we've traveled some out west, and if you've found that congregations are sometimes hours apart from one another. Sometimes that's just because of geography. There's nothing. If you travel in Montana and Wyoming and some of those places, it's hours to the next little town to begin with, and you can imagine then congregations would be spread out even that much further. And so sometimes it's just a geographic thing that happens in the kingdom. But sometimes it is because of weak teaching, lack of maybe training of preachers, lack of good resources. We have found sometimes congregations using denominational material to teach, and you know where that's going to lead. And so you can understand then when I say that congregations lack support and resources. We've met brethren who had no idea maybe even about Apologetics Press. And I know, I remember hearing Eric Lyons here, and so I know you're well acquainted with Apologetics Press and have probably been acquainted with some of their curriculum, free curriculum that they have. But that's a resource that the Brotherhood's had for years and years and years. Of course, Gospel Broadcasting Network, the Scattered Abroad Network, Light Network, these are podcast networks that are out there and video networks that are out there. And so there's a great number of resources that our Brotherhood has that maybe not everybody's aware of. And so we get to try to be a pipeline for those resources and for those congregations, and sometimes just trying to connect maybe preachers with school, or school with congregations and so forth. And so we find ourselves kind of in communication in all of those areas, kind of being a pipeline to one another. But opportunities abound everywhere. And you know this right here, opportunities to plant congregations, right? Opportunities to help and to work with one another in the kingdom. So there are numerous opportunities, and that was one thing that started kind of weighing on us. Our kids were out of the home, were married, and so we were thinking about, okay, well, typically speaking, approaching 30 years of any type of normal work, I'll say normal work, maybe secular work, we'd be thinking about maybe looking at getting close to retirement and things. What are we going to do next, right? Well, in preaching, that's not always the case. They say preachers don't retire. We just find a new way to continue to do the work. And so for us, what was next. We wanted to try to impact maybe the kingdom in a different way, in a better way, and maybe fill in an area or a gap that we saw in the Lord's kingdom. Nobody really doing this type of specific work in the kingdom. Maybe one or two couples through the years who have done some work like this, and maybe in a little bit here, maybe a couple months over here, and things like that. And in fact, that's how we were going to slow roll this out. I wasn't really necessarily ready to step out of the pulpit full time yet, but when B.J. Clark at the School of Preaching heard about the work we were doing, he says, "We want you on the road now. When can you start?" I said, "I don't know. When do we need to start?" He said, "What do you need?" And so this kick-started everything for us and got us on the road, got us doing the work, and then we've been slowly then, because they fully funded us out the door, and then our goal has been to be about half and half of support from the school and then support through the Brotherhood. And so that's what we're working on right now, is that point. So that's why we exist. And our mission out of that, just to kind of pare it down just a little bit, to encourage preachers, to strengthen congregations, and to help plant congregations, to plant churches. And of course, there's great opportunity in doing that, and we've seen that even throughout the country, areas that obviously as we travel, areas where there's no located congregation, and so as we continue to travel through some of those areas, we're looking for opportunities. We'll visit, look at the assets in the area, what might really benefit that particular area, a certain location in a larger town or something like that might be a good location, and then going in there with maybe another missionary who would be willing to plant themselves, and then we start trying to work on that idea of planting a congregation. But strengthening congregations, and we'll talk about how we do that here in just a moment, and encouraging preachers, as I've already mentioned. Let me make this statement, and I think it's one of the things that really, when over the last 4 years, I've served as the alumni president of the Memphis School of Preaching. So all of our alumni across our Brotherhood, trying to keep up with them and what's going on, and how many are still preaching and things like that. So being aware of some of those numbers, here's what we found. So we train a good number of preachers. We graduate somewhere between 15 and 20 per year. We need to, obviously, that number needs to be greater. We need to train more preachers, and there are a lot of good Brotherhood schools that are out there trying to do that with that very purpose in mind. And certainly the Memphis School of Preaching is doing that. Within 10 years, we lose almost 60% of those trained preachers. Now, first question you probably have is the same question I had. Why? Why is that happening? What's going on? Can we pinpoint something specific? Or are there several things that are taking place in that we need to try to do a little bit differently? And we found that there's probably a list of reasons. It's not just one particular thing, but some of it has to do with our youngest preachers going to the most difficult works with very little experience, with a whole lot of book knowledge, and go into a congregation, and within 2 or 3 years, maybe with no eldership, with a handful of members, they're doing all the work and they're burnt out, and they've probably been made in some of those places pastors and didn't even see that coming because of maybe inexperience. And so sometimes we do things a little bit backwards, unfortunately, especially as it comes to thinking about our youngest preachers. And so if we can do things a little bit better, so the Memphis School of Preaching has a graduate program in place now. It's just started up this last year. And so that's something that gives them a little bit of opportunity to stay a little bit longer in school and to mature, to grow a little bit more. And we look for internships for our youngest preachers especially. It doesn't have to be one of our youngest preachers, but somebody that's just looking for more experience before they maybe go to their first full-time work. And so they are able to work with a good mentoring preacher, with a good eldership, They sit in some elders' meetings and know something about how the church actually gets things done, so to speak. They work with some deacons. They're put in charge of some things. They're given responsibility. They're given an opportunity to grow, but in a very safe environment to do so. And then that congregation is able to help them in 2 years' time, maybe to send them out from there, fully backed with a congregation that loves and supports them, is going to follow them in their work, and they just get a better start that way. And so we feel like that's one of the ways that we can certainly help keeping those preachers preaching. And so kind of one of our little quick bylines, if I was giving an elevator speech, sometimes I'll say, well, Memphis trains them and we want to keep them preaching. And so that's part of our work in doing this. So that's our mission. How we accomplish that, sometimes it's just filling in. We've had numerous opportunities. We'll give some numbers here in just a moment, but in a lot of the congregations we visited, maybe we're just presenting the work, maybe like we are this morning, and so not really doing anything specific with that congregation other than here's the work, here's something to think about, here's ways that we might be able to help. So sometimes we'll go in and do that. Sometimes it's just giving a preacher a break. Again, sometimes preachers need to be able to sit in the pew with their family and just worship and to grow a little bit themselves. And so, and every preacher will tell you they need that. They love to be in the pulpit. They love to preach. They love to teach. That's why they do what they do. But they also need a little break themselves. And so sometimes it's filling in. And sometimes some of these congregations don't have a located preacher. And so it's the men filling in. And you can maybe understand what that would look like. Men who have full-time jobs and families going full-time and, getting things done throughout the week and still trying to come up with a sermon with maybe no real training. Maybe they're great at it, and so it works well for a time, but anyway, it gives a little bit of a break to some of these places where maybe they're struggling a little bit. Seminars, we are trying to hone in, especially over this next couple years, on several different seminars. We've done marriage retreats or marriage seminars, and leadership seminars. There's a picture there of a coming home event that a congregation in Piedmont Road had in Atlanta, and we were there for that, and it was kind of our first edification seminar that we did. It was kind of built that way. It dealt with leadership, but it also dealt with mentorship and discipleship with this theme of homecoming, if you will. But anyway, so that was one of the things we're doing. This edification seminar, let me talk about that for just a moment. If I went around and asked if there was a plan in place for evangelism at the Margaret Street congregation, you could probably tell me what that is, right? Pretty much there's a plan in place. You know what that is. You know what you're going to be doing. And that's a continued effort. It's always ongoing, right? It is the mission of the church ultimately, right? Seek and save the lost. We understand that. We put a plan in place so that we can best and efficiently accomplish that task. Most congregations have a benevolent plan in place. What if somebody knocks on the door and asks for help? We pretty much know, and maybe even have a deacon over that. We know what's going to happen in that, how we're going to best help that individual. We know maybe the elders have already given some guidelines. Here's what we know we can do, and then we put someone in charge, or maybe even a group in charge that can help with that, and they're going to go out and accomplish that. There's a plan in place for that. What plan do we put in place for edification? We often talk about the threefold work of the church, right? Edification being one of them. Benevolence, evangelism, and also we can do what? So that we can continue to evangelize, right? So that we can spread the word, get the word out. When you go back to Ephesians 4, look at this with me again. In verse 16, it says, "From whom the whole body, joined and knit together." By the way, that's why we use that idea of the puzzle piece, that joined and knit together. It's the idea there. By what every joint supplies, every member of that body, right? According to the effective working by which every part, every member is doing its share, doing part of that work. That causes growth of the body. that working together, that strengthening together, that joined and knit together, that, he says, causes growth for the body, for the edifying of itself in love. It's a continued thing then that happens. What plan do most congregations have then to do that? We say, okay, well, we teach Bible classes. Absolutely. Wonderful. What kind of curriculum are you using? Are your teachers trained? Are you encouraging your teachers? Are you struggling to find teachers? There's some things that you can do in those areas, maybe to help and to bolster your Bible school program. And it's interesting, years ago, I heard a brother making a point that when we see real growth in a local congregation, yes, we'll sometimes see that pews will fill during a worship service. That's where you would get most of your visitors. But where you see real, steady, continued growth will be in your Bible classes. Because that's where your education is. That's where your training is. That's where you're getting down to discussing with people where they are and what's going on across a whole congregation, across every age group, right? And so it's broken down that way on purpose, and rightfully so that we can meet them there and work with that. And so, again, that's all part of edification, but there are other things that can be done as well. And it goes back to discipleship. It goes back to mentoring. It goes back to being a family unit and growing the family together, finding out what might be missing in an area that can be brought together by members, every member doing its part, doing its share. And so we come in and we work with congregations to do just that. Cindy does ladies' classes and certainly Ladies' Day. She's got several upcoming. She's done those through the years and certainly spoken to ladies at lectureships and polishing the pulpit and things like that. So she is a benefit to not only preachers' wives, having been one for quite a while now, almost 30 years, but also just being a friend to every age group of females in congregations and an encouragement to them. And that's a big deal. And we all need that, and we understand that. I've spoken a good deal about the church planting and growth and things like that, but obviously this is an area that we spend a great deal of time and want to continue to work. A couple of stories so that you can make some connections maybe to seeing how things are working across the brotherhood. The young couple that's on the left there, now they've got a little baby. So this was a picture from almost a year and a half ago now. And Drew and Maggie Reese, they're up in Indiana, in Columbia City, Indiana. It's very cold up here. You think it's cold here. They've got snow on the ground. And we were up there about a month ago for a second trip up there and got to ride snowmobiles for the very first time. But it's always nice to leave those areas, and my Florida blood just doesn't handle it very well. So, and I was born in Gainesville, Florida, and so I'm acclimated to that. Maybe you understand something about that. But anyway, so it was cold up there. In fact, our camper heater had gone out the week before, and so we were delayed a week even getting up there because we weren't going to go up there and freeze to death. So we had to. It took us a little while to get there. Anyway, this couple in that congregation, established back in the 70s, Drew grew up in that congregation. So young man, he's less than 30. He's been there now about 4 years. He had a great mentoring preacher and that was there. This congregation has never had an eldership. And the last 5 years, they have doubled in size. They're getting the work done. They're evangelistic. They're doing the work. It's very impressive. And they're very efficient, if you will, in their committees and men's meetings and things like that. But you can imagine now they've doubled in size in this short amount of time, what that's beginning to look like and the struggles that they're starting to have. And it's just like anything else. If you don't have good overseers watching for your souls in the congregation, you may baptize folks and they may walk right out the back door and you never see them again. So there needs to be elders in that congregation, and they're in a situation where they have men qualified. That's not the situation everywhere. We go to some places and they just don't have men qualified to serve in that capacity. Here they do. But there's somewhat of a holdup and a stubbornness. And so a little over a year ago, Drew asked me, he said, could you come up and just meet the men and meet the congregation and talk about leadership and talk about the need for an eldership? He says, I've been preaching on it and the urgency of it. I've taught about the qualifications. I said, you keep doing all of those things and we'll come up there because I might be able to come in and say some things. And number one, I know they can't fire me. And so I can say the hard things that need to be said. Not that he's not saying them, but again, they saw him running around when he was about this tall. And they might look at him a little in a way that they should not be looking at him. And that's just unfortunate, but that's the reality of things and how we do sometimes our young people. But he's sticking it out, and he's committed to it. They've got a building program. They're about to add on again. They did about a year ago. They took out kind of like, if you can imagine, the foyer area as you walk in those doors right there. They took classrooms that were in that area and they've shoved them back a little bit to make some auditorium room. But they've had to buy a property next door with a little house in it so they can meet up there as well and do some extra things. So they're growing, but they certainly need an eldership. And so we're continuing to work with that congregation and meet with them. Have some hard conversations with them, but that takes time. That takes time for I can't just walk in day one and go, okay, what's going on here? What's happening? Why are you not serving? I heard you were capable of serving. You're qualified to serve. Why are you not doing that? I can't walk in day one and do that. That's going to take some relationship time. That's going to take some building trust, letting them get to know us. And so we've gone up there several times, and we're going to continue to work with them. And it's not anything under some hidden pretense that they don't know why we're there. The men wanted us there, and so so we're continuing to work with that congregation for that very purpose and reason. The fellow that's on in the middle there on the right, standing next to me, that's in Brockport, New York. And when we started this work, we had a member who had moved down from. This is right outside of Rochester, New York, and so Western New York. And this lady had moved down. This is when we were in East Tennessee, working at Eastside in Maryville, Tennessee. The congregation there, this lady moved down to be with her family down there. She was getting up in age, and so she needed taken care of and things like that. And she told us about the congregation. We met their preacher and another family that would come down to Polishing the Pulpit, which was right down the road from us. And so they would come and visit us on that Sunday prior. We got to know the preacher there, Scott Kelly, and one of the other families, and just great folks. And so when we started doing this work, we, under the eldership of the Forest Hill congregation that oversees the Memphis School of Preaching, there's a member there who I went to school with his son years ago, but he had moved from that area. His family's up there, and he was up there at a funeral. This is his nephew that's in the picture here. This is Philip. And so Philip was taking his kids to a VBS. Well, that's not their background. They're very Catholic background, and that struck a chord with him. Something's off here. And so he said, hey, well, would you be willing to study the Bible? And so they started studying. They were studying over the phone. He'd mail him some material. They'd have a Bible study. They were getting close to the study on baptism. He actually flew up there to have that study with him. The next morning he was baptized. And all of this is happening while we had this member who had moved down there years ago that had been a member with us. She calls me and she says, hey, Scott, the preacher up there, his mother had passed. His brother passed away 2 weeks ago. He's really just struggling, and maybe you can go and visit him. I said, well, actually, we're on the way to go and to also visit this young man and get him connected to that congregation, and because he lived right down the road from there. And so we wanted to make that connection with them, and we were able to do that, spend some time. We've been up there twice now, and that congregation, especially with the help of this young man, he's very evangelistic. All of his family is that way. His mother had been baptized years ago when Jerry Manning had lived up there. And there was a congregation meeting in his home for a while because of where they were located. They were trying to plan a congregation. They were meeting in his home for a time. And then when he moved to Tennessee, that group of individuals who had obeyed the gospel moved over to the Brockport congregation. And so he had a connection there as well. So all these things are starting to connect, and we're meeting all of these folks and meeting this young man. When we went up there, this has been a couple months ago now, when we had gone up there the month prior, they had baptized 5 people. So the congregation's growing, they're thriving again. This is a congregation that was nearly dead. And I say that in a loving way, but they were dying out. They had not had young people in that congregation since they had pretty much all graduated, and there were no new ones there for maybe almost a decade. It had seemed like, just hearing the stories and just trying to pinpoint the time frame for them, it had been quite a while. In fact, when Philip brought his 2 children in, they had to go in the closet and dig out materials and makeshift set up a Bible class real quick for them. They did that. Now they're thriving. They've got some other young people that are starting to come. Philip has baptized right before we got there, or maybe while we were there, his sister was baptized. I mentioned his mom a moment ago. She had been baptized years ago, but her brother was told by her husband, kind of mob style, like he was sitting in their living room. They came home one night and he flips on the lamp shade. He's sitting in the recliner, that kind of scene. And he says, "You're done teaching the Bible to your sister. You're done. You're just cutting that off right now." And it was shortly after that they moved to Tennessee. And so there was really no more opportunity that seemed to be there. But she's very willing. She's excited about what's going on for Philip and now for the sister. She has come and visited the congregation since then and is excited about what's going on. And this guy who sat mob style in his brother-in-law's living room trying to run him off from teaching the gospel is now much more open to it all. And so there's doors of opportunity there. And so we're connected in that way. And I guess my point in saying all of that, you see the little puzzle piece that says every piece matters. That's really what it's about. All those connections in the kingdom that we didn't know that we were making through these years, and then getting those opportunities to connect with those congregations, help build up those congregations, and hopefully give them even more opportunity and the resources that they need. That congregation, again, had a need for curriculum. Cindy's been working with some of the ladies there to help get in place, better curriculum for them, for their Bible classes. And so there's so many stories, but I know time won't allow us to just do that. But let me give you some numbers, and these are maybe a month or so, maybe a month outdated just a little bit. I think, if I counted right, this is the 80th congregation we have visited since June 2024. So it's a lot of congregations that we have visited. We have worked specifically, done more than just come in and present or fill in. We have done specific works with at least 30 of those congregations. And so our goal, obviously, in this first year or two have been to get to as many places, let them know about the work that we're doing, obviously pick up some support as we're doing that, but make those connections so that we now can come back in and continue to help those congregations and continue to work with those congregations. And so in a similar fashion as the Apostle Paul did, kind of circling back through some of those same congregations that he had planted. And so that's kind of what we do. And instead of, I think in the first year, technically, we were somewhere around, I think it was 56 congregations, or either 57 congregations in the first year. We're slowing that down to 25, 30 congregations in a year span, and being able now spend 2-3 weeks in some places with them, even prior to a seminar, prior maybe to even a gospel meeting that they're having. We'll come in and campaign for a week or two ahead of a gospel. It doesn't matter if I'm preaching the meeting or not, but we'll work with that congregation, help them maybe market in town just a little bit to get the word out and do some campaign work with them, working with the school. That gives us an opportunity, and I'm hoping there's opportunities down the road, maybe a little bit closer, to work alongside of all of those campaigns that are going out every year that the students get to do from the School of Preaching. And I know that those campaigns were used here when the Avalon congregation was planted as well, to kind of test the waters and to see, where maybe the best suitable plant would be. And so and we want to be purposeful in that with our campaigns from the school as well. And so we love that idea and hope that that'll be useful again in the future. Quite a few miles traveled. That's about 85,000 miles at this point in time. One transmission, a set of tires, a set of brakes on the truck, on just the truck, a set of tires on the camper, and something else happened. Oh, a whole fuel system had to be replaced on the truck. It's a diesel, so you can ask me that question later. But anyway, so a lot of things have happened, a lot of miles, but those miles are purposeful. And we spent even a whole 3 months going out west, not just introducing 416 to those congregations, but also kind of recruiter type, going out and letting those congregations know about the Memphis School of Preaching, because that's not a typical circle that far out west for the School of Preaching. And so kind of getting the word out in some different ways there. We do a lot of podcasting. We're part of the, let's see, I'll get there in just a moment. Let me back up then. We do our own podcast. Cindy and I do 416 Ministries podcast. We have one called Coffee Chat. Cindy and I, we drink a lot of coffee, copious amounts of coffee. And if you've ever been around us, you know that to be true. But we will, from wherever we go, we usually find some beans at a local place, and we'll just say, hey, we're drinking beans from so-and-so, but here's actually where we are, and here's where we've been the last couple of weeks, here's where we're headed next. It's a way that we kind of get to report, talk about those works, let the brotherhood know about those works and any needs that those congregations may have, because I know we have a big, loving, grateful brotherhood that likes to serve and likes to help. And so congregations that know that there's a particular need, it may be right in their wheelhouse of service, and they want to reach out and they want to help in some way. And so that lets them know that. We do interviews. We interview preachers. And so, again, letting those preachers get to talk about the local work that they're doing, talk about their family in that location, how long they've been there, how they view the work that they're getting to do in that location. And it's interesting because we find now, after doing this a little while, that brethren that are seeing this, they're like, hey, I've heard of that congregation before too. And as we're traveling, we're going to go and we're going to stop in and we're going to visit. And any visitor that comes to the door, what an encouragement that is to a congregation, and of whatever size you are, right? When you have visitors, that's important, right? That's encouraging to see brethren especially come in, maybe to see others who come in as well who want the truth, but to see brethren who come in from other parts and to see their faithfulness, wanting to worship, wanting to come to Bible class, wanting to grow, and wanting to know their brethren here in that way. And so that just opens the door for some of those very things, and again, lets our brotherhood know about maybe a specific need. And maybe it's just, hey, we need your prayers. We're located in a really difficult area, not a lot of resources in the area. Folks are moving away. The church seems to be dying, but we need your help. And one thing that happened through COVID is we found out that people in some of their jobs can work from anywhere. And so we're kind of started talking about this in the last little bit, that sometimes it might be good. Sometimes I find that people are working out of a camper like we do and traveling different places. Well, what if they could go somewhere and park for 3 months in a different location and help encourage a congregation somewhere while they're doing that? Or maybe someone's looking for an area to which they might retire, or they're looking to make a move in a job or something like that. to know something about a good, sound congregation or a good area that they might go and help a congregation and then can look in that area for a job. It's time. As preachers, we're used to moving, okay? We know that we're the most expendable members of a congregation, okay? We get that. We signed on for that. Not always fair the way that works, but that's just part of the job. But the idea is that if we could move families to go help throughout this brotherhood, aren't we told to seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness? So that might be something that you might think about. Let me make mention of this, if I can back it up. Obviously, 1 Corinthians 15 reminds us about continuing in this work, being steadfast, continuing on, knowing that this work is not in vain. The Lord's work is never done in vain. We help preachers, we encourage churches, we plant hope. There's the podcast things. I knew they should have been there. We like to make those connections. Preachers, congregations, families, it all leads to growth under that picture of Ephesians 4:16 there. So how can you help? Well, there's a lot of ways, and I mentioned that Memphis got us started out fully funded to begin with. We're getting to a point where we are trying to get to half and half, where Memphis supports us half of our salary and travel expenses, and we raise the rest. And we're about $1,000 a month, just trying to be transparent, about $1,000 a month for monthly support. And so we're looking for 8 to 10 congregations that would kind of pick us up and help us finish that amount. But we've also found, because of those miles that I mentioned earlier and the things that have happened over the last year, it's made us be aware that we also need what we're calling a roadside emergency fund or maintenance fund or some of those things, so that we can plan for the next set of tires and plan for oil changes and plan for the next time that we're broke down or whatever the case may be, that we have those funds available. And so one-time donations often will go into that particular fund as well, just to be set aside for to go through this year, and so that we're not left stranded somewhere and having to call last minute going, hey, we really need this and we need this, and so that we can kind of plan better for that. As fairly new missionaries, that was a lesson that we've learned kind of the hard way. And so something that we were told, but we were so focused, I think, on just trying to raise any support. We weren't setting aside funds directly for that, but now we're trying to think ahead on that. So those are the needs we have. So how can you help? You can partner with us individually or congregationally. We're certainly thankful for anything, and any little bit helps. All those funds are overseen through the Memphis School of Preaching and the Forest Hill elders that oversee the work there at the Memphis School of Preaching. We ask that you pray for us. There's a lot of congregations, a lot of preachers, a lot of elders, and members and families that are that are going through many of the same things that you are. We need to spend time in prayer for our brotherhood and for what's going on in our brotherhood and for opportunities. And I think there are things that are going on even in this country that are affording us opportunities for planning congregations and for having Bible studies, and we need to be paying attention to that. Plan. There may be something that we can do to help the congregation here. We're hoping that's the case. I'm going to meet with the elders later and talk about maybe some opportunities. But you may know of congregations, you may know of a preacher, you may know of an eldership somewhere that might be helped in this work that we're doing, or that might be a help to us as we travel about. And so if you know that, help us, give a contact to us, make sure that you write that down. I don't remember as well as I used to. Maybe I never really did, so write something down so I can find that a little bit later. Have your name on it as well, so it's not just a cold contact. I can say, brother or sister so-and-so from Margaret Street gave us your information, said that we might be able to help in some way. And so that opens the door of opportunity as well, and maybe gets us a better connection with that congregation. There's QR codes on most everything that we have. There's a table set up in the back for free material back there, and I hope you'll check that out. That's how you can help us. And we are grateful again for the opportunity to be here and to talk about the work. This is how occasionally we'll get somebody that will call the school and say, hey, can you Do you know somebody that might can help? Yes, we'll call 416 and get you in touch with them. But most of our contacts have all came through when we've presented the work, and we knew somebody who knew somebody, and so we called them, got in touch with them, and started making a plan. And that's how we've gotten probably 98% of the contacts that we've had. Those congregations, that's how they've all been contacted, is in that way. Ephesians 4:16. I hope that it serves maybe better in your mind, thinking about the actual growth in a congregation. We help preachers, we encourage churches, and ultimately plant hope, that hope that is in God, Titus 1 and verse 2. Appreciate your time and your attention.